Here's an interesting one for me. The Krav Maga thing.
Yes.
You see a lot of like McDojo Life shares a lot of like BS Krav Maga stuff.
Yep.
And even Sistema,
Sure.
Russian martial art. People just like touching, using the force, motherfuckers fall down.
But I've trained with a guy who's ex-Russian.
This is where I'm headed to.
Sure.
I've also seen some Krav Maga practitioners that are f***ing savages.
Yes.
I had a mate who had actually done time in the Israeli army.
There you
who
go.
was showing me some videos, not of a guy that he'd trained with, but of some training type stuff they'd done. And this guy was showing his students how when someone grabs you from behind with a knife to your neck, he's like, this is how you get out of it. And what he was teaching them was like, you are going to have to sacrifice these 3 fingers.
Wow.
But you're going to put those fingers here. They're probably going to get cut off or at least like pretty detached. But that buys you time. And it's like highly practical shit. And they're drilling it under stress.
Yeah.
And like the environment that they're in was really tense. And you're like, oh my God, this is real shit, right? It's talking about, it's not like twist the wrist, break it, you know. So, you know, that sort of stuff I look at, I'm like, that's obviously effective. I say obviously because there are people out there that are fighting, you know, like in battlefields,
war,
defending their nations, right, on a daily basis. I don't want to I want to keep it clear that there's like 2 sides to this thing, isn't there?
And I agree with that. I've trained with a bunch of guys, Koreans, Iranians, some African nation, where they did military service as young people. They had to. It was compulsory. Oh, you just finished high school? You go do military service. You're in the military for 2 to 3 years. Or you do it part-time while you're at uni, whatever. Oh, they know how to load a gun. You know, like you have a black belt as a minimum requirement. The whole idea of being harder to kill is very much like ingrained. Yeah, if you're training to kill another person and not be killed, that's real. That's cool. I'm amazing. Respect. I don't have that training, and that's why I've never tried to espouse jiu-jitsu as a form of self-defense. But for sure, knowing how to do some kind of different techniques to protect yourself is helpful in the heat of the moment, if you can remember. But if you've never actually been sucker punched and then had to try and defend yourself while you're concussed, you know, I'm not, you know, you see those terrible videos where the instructor's just punching their students in the face or slapping them or whatever. I'm not actually promoting that. But I think one of the most unrealistic things about the idea of self-defense is people practice in the same way jiu-jitsu. If people have thrown a lot of shade on drilling because they're saying, oh, there's not enough real stress of the role in the situation. You do have to learn basic technique movement with minimal resistance. But then over time, you've got to up the resistance and you've got to gradually, you know, really,
go live.
Yeah, get used to that. And I'm not somebody, we were actually talking about knife before. We were talking about Salat and Kali, and, you know, a friend of mine had made me aware of a system called Amok, which is derived from Salat, which is all about live blade knife stuff. And he actually ended up, shout out to James Ross from Melbourne. He was wearing protective goggles and he went to a grading and they're doing live blade. They've got these things protecting their arms. And the dude went like slash with the knife and it broke the protective glasses and gashed him.
Oh, shit.
And during this, you're like, this is not something you get your 10-year-old child into. One guy got cut and it was an arterial bleed. And it was just, they kept sparring and his blood is just going onto people sitting, you know, cross-legged back straight. You don't worry about any like blood transmission viruses or anything. And he was like, I think I won't do this anymore. This seems a bit too intense.
Full on.
Yeah. And he's a very quiet guy. You wouldn't know that about him, but he's a trained killer.